Anna and Lori, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm excited that we get to kick off 2023 with you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And even more so, we get to talk about one of my favorite books of 2022, Rookie Mistake. Oh, loved it and can't wait to talk all about it. But really, before we get into the book, I'm curious, what led to you two collaborating? What is the origin story behind that?
Well, we had tried to collaborate, I think it was back in like 2014, but it was just the wrong time, the wrong book. It just kind of fell away. But then the way this one got started was I moved to Pittsburgh at the end of 2021, and we started going to hockey games. And I got an idea for a hockey book, and I mentioned it to Anne, and Anne kept feeding the plot bunny.
Oh, you should do this. Maybe you should do that.
And I was literally walking back to my car after a hockey game, and Anne texted me, maybe your character is ... And I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. My husband's like, what? Hold on, I got to text Anne. And I was like, do you want to write this with me? And they were like, yeah, I think I do. And that's how it got started. It really was as simple as that. And then I wrote a chapter and sent it to Anne, and it just kind of went from there.
Yeah, and then it was just, we were on, it started going, it was just.
We kind of talked about, the characters' backgrounds and all that, and where we thought it might be going, and some scene ideas that we had. But for the most part, we kind of just ran with it, whatever, built off each other's chapters. And because we were going to hockey games and seeing each other pretty frequently, because now that we live in the same city, we talk about it quite a bit, and just ran with it.
But it also going to the hockey games and going up to practices and things like that.
And training camp.
Yeah, going to training camp. There was a lot of inspiration, I think, just seeing the players and how they interacted on the ice, especially at training camp and at practices where they're sort of loose and relaxed, and they're really just kind of, they're having fun, they're working out there, but you can also tell they really just enjoy what they do.
And they're screwing off and chirping, and they're obviously being little boys out there, and you see a little more of the team dynamic, just the guys out there. And we went to a couple of away games last season. We went to one where we deliberately got tickets behind the bench in Columbus, and then we went to one in Detroit, and a lot of that was just to see different, part of it was just we wanted to, but also see what it actually looks like on the bench, so we're like looking over their shoulders through the whole game. And so we were kind of researching it as we went, just being immersed in hockey and hockey culture.
How much got really kind of talked about at games? Because I could imagine, something happened and you could turn to one another and go, what if so-and-so did that? That thing just happened.
Well, a lot of times we'd be sitting separately because at the time we didn't have our season tickets. So my husband and I would just sit anywhere in the arena, and I would text and be like, this could be fun. Or, they would text me and be like, I could totally see Isaac doing X, Y, and Z or things like that. And so there would be some of that going on during the game.
Yeah. Or I think there was one play that ended up actually in the book. I think somebody went into the penalty box and they had to, toward the end of the game, and it was tied game, and they ended up in the penalty box and they had to pull the goalie.
That was actually the opening scene when Isaac is in the locker room going, oh my God, I hope Julian doesn't see me. It was actually Chris Letang that went to the box, and that had gotten, we were kind of chatting about that, and that was when Anne had texted me and said, it would be really funny if this happened. And that's when I was like, do you want to write this with me?
Yeah.
So that ended up being it kicked off the book and us writing together and the opening scene. So
yeah, so that was based a little bit on an actual thing that happened.
Yeah, it was horrible for the Penguins, but it was great for Rookie Mistakes. So.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious that you gave it to the rookie, because Letang is just not a rookie.
Oh, no. No, but it just worked better for that, because I was writing Isaac and he was the rookie. So
this is a great moment to ask the question we've got from a member of our Patreon community. So Tessa lives in Pittsburgh and is a Penguins season ticket holder also. So she loves all the Pittsburgh references and the hockey. And she knows, of course, that the characters in Rookie Mistake, 100% fictional, but couldn't help, as she says, noticing a parallel between Elias, Nisha, and Julian with Crosby, Malkin, and Letang. Is this intentional, subconscious, or is it completely in Tessa's head? or somewhere in between.
It wasn't based, like we weren't saying we're going to base them off these, but that's the dynamic that we see all the time. And like Anna and I were talking earlier, you see that a lot on NHL teams. There's pairs and trios that kind of have that dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, there are certainly with Julien, there are some callbacks to Letang, the French Canadian. I mean, it's obviously not Letang because Letang doesn't have the same background.
Yeah.
But there are little things like having the nickname King. There's, if you ever see Letang's gloves, they actually say legend on them because of Malkin. So there are like tiny little callbacks there. But that was really the only sort of specific thing, because Nisha,
those three characters really developed on, they took on lives of their own.
Yeah. But Nisha and Elias were just names on a page that started out as names on a page that Lori had written, I'm friends with these superstars on this team. And I was like, well, that's one's going to be the captain and the other's going to be the alternate. And it just happened that I picked Elias to be the captain and Anisha to be the alternate. And also I think it's funny because there's a meme that went around a little bit that had like, pictures like a hockey team and the pictures people on the roster, in the NHL roster. And it was things like, loudest man in the world. And, the player we don't mention was a duck. And, they have the, things like, one of two best friends and, TikTok boy and things like that. So you can pick what character.
It's like stereotypes from one.
Yeah. Basically stereotypes. And one of them was lovable Russian. Like every NHL team, it seems, has a lovable Russian. And so, Gino is the lovable Russian on the Penguins, and Nisha happens to be the lovable Russian on the Griffins.
Yeah, but that's kind of where the similarity between the two of them stops, because Nisha's his own. Nisha really took on a life of his own, and so did Elias.
Yeah.
So.
And it's funny because I actually got asked by somebody, and I think people see their own teams in those dynamics, because I actually got asked by somebody else if we based Nisha and Elias off of Ovi and Backstrom, which we did not. So
yeah,
but you have the Russian and the Swede. So,
And we moved forward a little bit there. There's going to be some people who are like, what are they talking about? So tell us about what Rookie Mistake is about, so everybody can kind of connect that together if they haven't heard me gush about the book previously.
I mean, the short version is a rookie forward who has a major crush on a veteran defenseman, and it turns out that goes both ways, or starts to go both ways. They get together, but Julien has a really painful past from dating someone when he was a rookie, and that kind of comes full circle in this book. So
yeah, and that's the heart of the story. And then you just have the surrounding team, and Julien is one of the alternate captains on the team, and the other alternate is Nikolai Sidorov, and then you have Elias Karlsson, who's the team captain, and they've all sort of been friends for a long time. So, and then it's really the sort of this unfolding of the relationship between Isaac, and actually it's the building of the relationship between Isaac and Julien, because they actually get together really fast. And I know some people are like, oh my gosh, they've gotten together and there's still all this book left. And the rest of the book is really about them finding their footing and developing an honest to God relationship after deciding they want to date. And then sort of this slowly creeping horror of what happened to Julien, sort of being slowly bits and pieces falling into
creeping
place
in from the past, and getting that feeling of, this is going to come up at some point, you just don't know how,
and then how what happens when it does come up, and the relationships between all the characters and how that affects them as well. And sort of the support system Julien has.
How did you decide on the trajectory of the romance? There were so many ways it could go with the rookie and the veteran and the crush, but then to add all of this other stuff into it too.
I think as far as the relationship went, we knew right off the bat, we wanted to have, there was going to be a power dynamic because of the age, because of the experience. And so that was part of the reason why, Isaac, I don't think I could have made him a submissive if I wanted to. As soon as we started writing the dynamic between him and Julien, it was like, Julian's obviously a submissive to us, and Isaac had that kind of dom feel to him, or like he could be a dom if somebody taught him how. And it kind of just developed on its own from there. Like we didn't really, we the only things we really planned with the book was how things were going to blow up, how the past was going to come. But as far as the relationship, we kind of just let it happen, just saw where it was going to go. And we had some ideas of things that were going to happen, but it was mostly, let's just see how it develops. And because we wanted it to feel organic, because it really was.
Yeah. And I think the one thing we wanted to make sure was that the blow up, or the dark moment, was not one of those, well, you should have told me about this, and the one character getting mad at the other character because they didn't tell them about that we didn't want it to be like this massive, well, we're not going to date anymore because this thing happened.
Yeah, something bad happened to you and you didn't tell me about it, so I'm not going to date you. It just didn't.
Yeah, that kind of seems, it's been, well, one, it's been done a lot, but two, it always seems kind of like it cheapens the relationship a bit. I don't know if that's how, it's not how I would react if I found something out. I would want to be there and be supportive, not angry, so.
Yeah, kind of the understanding that if somebody's been through something horrible, the reaction of how dare you not tell me has never sat right with me, because what if I'm just not ready to tell anybody? What if I'm not ready to think about it? What if I'm not ready to even put it into words? And it's the how dare you not tell me is making it about them instead of making it about the victim.
Yeah.
And I don't like that dynamic at all, and neither did Anne. So we really were avoiding that. And Isaac didn't feel like the kind of person who would make that about him and take it personally. His reaction is to be, I want to make sure that Julian's okay. He's horrified to hear about this, but not because it was something that was kept from him, but he cares about Julian and he wants Julian to be okay.
The thing I really liked about Isaac in that scenario is it showed he was kind of wise beyond his years. I mean, he's ribbed by the team because of his age quite a lot, especially in the early run of the book. And sometimes he proves himself to be the very kid that they're ribbing him to be. But in some cases, especially how he handles Julian, is just extraordinary. And I wish more young adults could be that way, how they deal with the world. But I thought it really conveyed well for him.
The thing is, I think a lot of young people they're not really given a lot of credit for it, but they're kind of encouraged not to be. Like the way Isaac reacted to Julian. I was watching a TV show that my husband and I watch all the time last night, and I was pissed off because half the conflict revolved around three people just overreacting to everything, making it about them, not communicating with each other. And I was like, this is so just contrived. Real people don't behave this way, or they shouldn't. And I feel like, Isaac, maybe he is a little bit wise beyond his years, but he tends to think about things before he reacts, which probably comes from being a hockey player and having to kind of analyze everything. And it's just not the way he does things.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head there too, because you give us Isaac's thoughts as he's like, how do I deal with this? What am I going to do? And that back and forth, like his options. And I love that you dug that deep in to the characters, really both him and Julian, to give us that, that level of detail.
Yeah, because they do both. They both overthink things and they underthink things. But I just think we just tried to write them as true to them as they could be,
as we could, and be respectful to the characters. Yes, I think sometimes as a writer you have to also be respectful to your own characters, and not push them to do things that they wouldn't do
just for the sake of conflict.
Exactly.
And I think it also comes down to, I think one thing that Anne and I both agree on with our books is neither one of us really cares for toxic relationships. Whether that, is obviously there's going to be toxic relationships in stories, but as far as romanticizing a toxic relationship and having, that kind of dynamic, that we don't find it romantic or attractive. And so personally, I prefer my characters to have healthy relationships. That's why I kind of joke that, you're in one of my books, or if you're not in therapy now, you will be by the end, because it just feels, I like my characters to be in touch with their feelings and to think about things and to not be toxic with each other, talk.
And when you make mistakes, you have issues, actually learn how to handle things.
Yeah. And then we go on to write a book with two characters who absolutely need to learn to do that.
Yeah. Oh, those boys.
Oh God, yeah. Elias and Nisha, they're a mess.
That's clear even from Rookie Mistake that there's something going on there.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, and a lot of people asked us, are they going to get their own book? And we knew halfway through Rookie Mistake they were going to get their own book.
Mm-hmm.
But when we started with Scoreless Game, a lot of the thing was that they had this dynamic with Julian for all these years that was just sort of the status quo, and then Isaac came in and threw the balance off, and suddenly they're having to think about things and deal with things, and dynamics are changing, and they're not handling that very well.
No, yeah, they
don't handle it as well as Isaac and Julian did.
No, there's actually a scene, I think, where Elias is, because it's from Elias's point of view, where he's talking to Julian, and Julian's like, look, with the whole thing with Julian and Isaac stirred up the water in the pond, and all the muck everything's rising to the surface, so all the stuff that was hidden is all coming up. And that's sort of a lot about what Scoreless Game is about, is all the everything's been disrupted, so now they have to deal with everything that's sort of floating to the surface. And also Elias has the sudden realization that, I think he's 30 in Rookie Mistake, he's about to turn 31 in Scoreless Game, and he's like, and he's on the, I think his contract is up the next season, so he's getting close to free agency, and he's like, oh shit,
everything's changing, and
everything is changing. Am I even going to be here in next year, in 2 years? Because I'm, am I trade fodder? Julian's just settled down, and I have no one. What's going to happen? I love the life I have here. And so he gets up in his head about future, about planning for the future, because he's he likes to plan for things.
And Nisha hears that and thinks, Elias wants to leave, I'm going to lose Elias, and now I've lost Julian and Elias. He does not handle that very well.
Yeah.
Oh, those guys.
Yeah. There were a lot of texts back and forth while we were writing this of, oh my God, these boys.
Yeah. For people who actually speak two common languages to each other, because they speak both English and Russian with each other. That
they suck at communicating.
Yeah, they really suck at actually talking about stuff. So,
and as Anne and I were talking earlier, and they pointed out, the guys made a lot of assumptions about each other over the years, and that has really put their dynamic in a situation where, Elias is assuming Nisha isn't interested in him, and Nisha is assuming the same, and they're both very, very wrong.
Yeah. And yeah, it's the progression of the book is a little different, because
It's a lot different.
Yeah, it's a lot different than your average romance, because you expect, your first act, you get together, it's like the meet cute, you get together. The second act is you're building up to the dark moment, and the third act is like after the dark moment kind of thing. And the dark moment in this book happens in the first act,
about 20 or 30% in, I think.
Yep. Yeah.
And then it's the fallout. And
yeah, so this really deals with more of putting back together a friendship and building a relationship after.
And it gets pretty messy in the beginning because mistakes are made.
Yeah.
As you would expect.
Yeah.
You've shared on social that you're done writing Scoreless Game and it's in edits.
It's with our editor right now. Yeah.
Any projection on when we might get to have it in our hands?
We're thinking March. It depends on what our editor says, and then schedules from there. But March is our thought right now.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. That seems to be about when unless there's like really, really heavy edits, like we have to rewrite half the book or something, which I don't think is going to happen. That I think that it'll take a little bit to get through the edits, but then the doing like proofing and copy editing and things like that will take a little bit. But
we've also both got, I've got other releases between now and then. So
yeah. So we have to work. I don't have anything coming out right now, but we need to fit it into Lori's schedule. And I don't want to put it, it's not a Valentine's book, so I don't want to put it near Valentine's Day, you know.
And I have a book coming out on Valentine's Day,
yeah.
so
yeah, it's so but March seems like a good.
And then book 3 will be along when we're kind of taking a break because Anne wanted to work on some of their solo stuff and I need to work on some of my solo stuff. But yeah, book 3 is making noise. So
yeah, and I also needed to figure out how to get in the head of the one character that I will be writing. So who you will meet in Scoreless Game. Yeah.
And Scoreless Game's going to be long too. We know Rookie Mistake was 500 some pages in paperback, 16 hours of audio, and apparently Scoreless Game is bigger than that.
Yeah, it's bigger.
Yeah, it kind of got, I don't want to say it got away from us because I don't think it did.
No, I think we just had a lot of ground to cover.
Lot to cover, yeah.
Because we had to deal with the things blowing up between the two of them, fixing all of that. There's some kind of outside issues that become a thing later on. Plus, some people picked up in book 1 that Nisha's got a bit of a drinking problem, and that becomes a core issue. And then, you know, once we do finally get them together, we want to show them together a little bit. So there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of things happening, and a lot of threads that we need to tie up by the end. So it wasn't that it got away from us, it just had to be that long in order to actually tell the story.
Yeah, it ended up being, you know, Rookie Mistake, they get together very fast, and it's you know, it's kind of heavy on the sex. Scoreless Game, they don't get together very fast. It's a very slow burn. I think this is the
slowest burn I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, it's like a slow burn.
Yeah, the distance from the beginning of the book to the first kiss is the longest of any book I've ever touched.
Yep.
But it's as long as it needed to be.
They work for it, and they certainly earn their happy ever after quite a bit. And you get to meet some more characters, some new people on the team, because there's always
some of the old
team, and some of the old people, and you know, and you get to see more of Isaac and Julian.
Yeah, Isaac and Julian are there. Obviously, we've got, you know, Paxi, and I love Paxi, so of course he has to be there.
Yeah, Paxi and Ozzy, and we get to see a little bit more of Paxi's family life a little bit. So
there's a little less hockey in this one too, as far as on-page games, because a good chunk of the book happens either during the off season or while Nisha's unable to play. So there is hockey on page, but not as much as in the first book.
The first act is basically leads up to opening night essentially. Yeah. So there's stuff that goes on beforehand, and it's a lot of things. I mean, Julian's birthday happens there, so they have a small birthday party and then a larger birthday party for Julian. So there's stuff going on there. But then the opening night, of course, is their banner raising for the cup they won. So, and a lot of bad things happen right around there.
Why are you giving them grief over the banner raising time? They need to celebrate that before.
We were kind of mean to them.
We were very mean
a lot.
Yeah, this is very we were when you read it,
buckle up.
Buckle up. It's right. Yeah. There. But you know, they I mean, I actually really fell in love with Elias as a character. Somebody recently said no one says, the writers don't say they have a favorite character, but every writer has a favorite character. And, you know, said, who's your favorite character? And for the longest time, it was Eli from Just Business. But I think Elias may have elbowed him out of the way as my favorite character that I've written, just because I love the way he thinks. I love the way he looks at life, and sort of the quirks.
It's a really different character. I really like
him. Yeah. I just enjoy him as a character.
And I really enjoyed Nisha. Nisha was really hard to write just because a lot of what's going on in his head is just kind of heart-wrenching. Because when you really get into his head, you start seeing that there's a lot going on, that, you know, the goofy Russian who's always telling complete bullshit stories is hiding a lot. Like there's a lot behind the goofy stories, and that was hard to write, but I loved him.
What does the writing and plotting process look like for you both? Obviously there was a lot of talking at games and texting across the arena at games, but then when it came down to writing it, how did that kind of work itself out? Was it kind of plotted, sort of plotted, more organic? Seems like it was more organic as it kind of went from what you've said so far.
Fairly organic, but like I would, when I started with Rookie Mistake, I wrote my first chapter, sent it to Anne, and we kind of, the first couple chapters were us sort of getting a feel for the characters, and then we would talk about, okay, I'm going to get them to whatever game, I'm going to have them do this, and we would talk a little bit about it, but sometimes the scenes would just sort of, you know, take on a life of their own, or I would like, certain scenes would be like, we need to have this scene, but it definitely needs to be in Julian's POV, or it needs to be in Isaac's POV, or in some cases, like when they told the team that they were together, I really wanted to write that scene because I had an idea in my head for it, and so we kind of just worked it out so that when it came time to write that scene, it was my turn.
Yeah, that was, it was like, okay, we're gonna have them tell the team at Thanksgiving, and that Lori's gonna take that part.
Like there would be a scene where like the scene in Las Vegas, the scene where they actually come out, I had that in my head really early on, and so I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead and write it, but if it doesn't work, or if when we get to it we want to go a different direction, then we'll just bin it. It ended up working, but I would jump ahead and just write something just to get it out of my head, and then we would just see how it fit when we got there.
Yeah. And we certainly knew that, like, the scene where Julian tells Isaac and Nisha and Elias what actually happened had to be from his point of view.
Yeah.
So,
but that the scene before that, we needed to have some from Isaac. So I had the scene before that to get his reaction a little bit, and then the scene immediately after. So we were trying to balance the emotions, but also make sure that, we got to be in Julian's head for that.
What was it like to put Julian's disclosure scene together? Because that was some of the most raw emotional material that I can remember reading in a book in quite some time. I come back to the word organic, and it was almost a monologue, like of just him just pouring this out. How did that kind of come together and to find the balance that was right without tipping over? There's so many ways that could have gone wrong at the same time.
That was probably the hardest scene of a book that I've written, I think, hands down, because there was so much that I had to be careful about, because you don't, you're dealing with a very heavy topic. You're dealing with, this abuse that happened when he wasn't quite a child, but he was 19 years old, and he was, first time really away from family. I mean, he had been away from family, but, away from any support structure, kind of
on his own.
And then him remembering this and trying to tell it to his friends and relive it in a lot of ways. It was hard, but also not trying to traumatize the readers too, because you want to make it obvious what happened, but you don't want to.
It's not a horror novel,
Right, it's not a horror novel, but it's also, the situation is horrible and it's horrifying, but you don't want to, you want it to be close, but not so close that it feels wrong to the reader, like that they're
like that it gets gratuitous. There comes a point where
you don't want it to be gratuitous. That's the word I was looking for. You don't, so it was sort of being able to show enough that the reader could infer what happened without laying it all on scene, because you don't actually need to see that. You don't need to actually see the assault itself. And I didn't want to do that to myself. I didn't want to do it to the readers. I didn't want to do it to Julian, even though he's exists only on paper.
Well, I think the way you had, where a lot of it was in Julian's head, but we're seeing Elias and Nisha and Isaac's reactions. I think that makes it visceral without making it so close to the bone, because you're feeling it through Julian, and then you're seeing them react. And I think it worked really well because their reactions elicited that horror without actually having to get into the horror.
And it was a lot of writing a little bit and correcting things and removing things and adding things and just tinkering with the words and how feelings were going to unfold. It took me a while. I mean, it wasn't something that I just sat down and did it at one time. I would sit down and write a little bit, and then I'd go back over it. I spent a long time on it, just, working through and making sure that all the words were right. It was a lot. It was just took time and being very careful. And I think it also helps that the I've been sort of revealing little bits of things as the book was going on. So it wasn't such a big shock it wasn't so much of a shock to the readers as it is to the characters, I think. Because the
guys had no idea. The reader knew, but the guys didn't.
Yeah, the readers knew more than Isaac and Nisha and Elias. And Nisha and Elias, I mean, in Scoreless Game, they're still kind of beating themselves up a little bit, especially Elias.
They're beating themselves up a lot. It comes up a lot
about not noticing what had happened. But yeah, it was a hard scene to say. I don't know. It was a hard scene to write.
And reviewing the audio of it was hard too.
Yeah, that I'm not quite sure how Michael did that, in terms of.
Well, I've put him through enough hell that I think he's.
Yeah, but it was just that
was a hard one.
He really nailed it. I mean, we got to give props to Michael Fiorello for his performance throughout the whole book, because he had to work up to that and then do that and then come out on the other side of it as the voice performer. And he was
we
just
knew 2 chapters in that we were going to hire him to do it. I mean, he does most of my books anyway, but early on we were saying that this is a Michael book. It has to be, not just because there's accents all over the place, but because it was really getting close to the bone with a lot of emotional stuff. And that's something he's really good at. Yeah,
he absolutely just was so perfect there. Like, he's always perfect, but I think this is like one of my all-time favorites of his performances.
Yeah, I mean, he's currently recording his 50th book for me. And I think Rookie Mistake is of my I have 2 favorites, and Rookie Mistake is one of them.
What's the other one? We should all know, so if we haven't heard it, we should go get it.
The Venetian and the Rum Runner, which is also 800 hours long. So. That one was 144,000 words. So
yeah. The audio for Scoreless Game will probably be out later than it was for Rookie Mistake, just because it costs a lot to pay a voice performer to do that many hours.
20 hours probably.
Yeah. And I will happily wait for Michael to do it, because I will need him to read this to me, because his accent work for Nisha and Elias, I just love it.
Oh yeah. And it'll be, it's first person with both of them. So
yeah. We didn't include, there's like maybe a few words of foreign language this time, so it's not like with a Rookie Mistake where there was a lot of Quebecois French. We decided we weren't going to try to mix Russian and Swedish and all that.
Well, especially because with Russian, like, you have to transliterate it to the English alphabet, and it just doesn't work very well. And Swedish is really hard to pronounce. And speaking of the French in Rookie Mistake, a big shout out to Bay Deckard, who we sent him the manuscript with all the French flagged, and he adjusted the phrasing and made sure that like the swearing was accurate and the phrasing, like, this is how a Quebecois would say this, and he did a great job on it.
And this is how a young Quebecois person would say it, as opposed to like your grandpa, because there were a couple things in there that was like, he'd never, somebody who's in their 20s would never say this, somebody who's 28 would never say this, and would gave us other phrases to use.
What's a favorite scene for you both from Rookie Mistake? Can you pluck one out of the... We were talking about
this beforehand because we were having a hard time pinning it down. I mean, for me, the one we were talking about, that really to the bone, visceral one, is a favorite because it's so hard. But if I had to pick one, probably either the Thanksgiving scene or when they come out publicly.
Yeah, I actually really like the epilogue, because you sort of see who Julian can become, who he's becoming after all of this, but you see the support with his family, and with Isaac, but you also sort of see that he's taken on some agency of his own.
Now, if I've done my research right, Laurie's had a few collaborations, we know that, but Anna, it looks like this is your first.
It is, yeah.
What made this the right time to do a co-write?
Well, it's the first one that actually came to fruition, I guess. Like I said, we had tried writing before, but even before that, I actually started this is a long time ago. I actually started co-writing a book with Jessica Freely, who unfortunately has since passed away. They passed away earlier this year. And that never happened. It was sort of a space opera, wacky space opera type that we got about, I don't know, a third into it, and then we both, our lives both kind of went other directions.
Which
So I
happens
like,
sometimes with collaborations.
yeah, I liked the idea of co-writing, but I guess the timing just never worked out until this was just the right time. And I think it really helps, probably not so much on Lori's end, but I think it really helps me to have the person like physically in the same location as me. I think it helps because then it's
because we see each other, we can talk about things in person.
yeah, I think I
like
need
Kari Z and I, we Skype at the beginning of every book, and sometimes like halfway through we'll Skype just to touch base on things, but we really only see each other or communicate that way on Skype. Otherwise, it's all via email. For Anime, I think we work better if we can sit and talk about things and talk through them.
Yeah, and we would do writing day, like we're after this we'll probably write a little bit. Well, we're working on separate stuffs now, but we'd do writing days together where we'd both, maybe Lori would be working on something different, but I'd be working on Rookie Mistake, and it would sort of, I'd pause and say, oh, this is happening, what do you think, kind of thing. So it really did help me to have the same location.
Yeah, and there were times like both the trips to Columbus and Detroit for games, we spent the entire drive both times hashing out Scoreless Game. We were still writing Rookie Mistake, but we were hashing out Scoreless Game, discussing kind of what our thoughts were on it, where we thought it might go, what might happen. So by the time we sat down to write that one, we'd spent hours and hours and hours talking about what we thought was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it still didn't quite go the way we had originally intended in some ways, but but it eventually, but a lot of the groundwork was laid by actually talking in person.
For what we were doing, I think this worked really well.
So on behalf of everybody who has loved Rookie Mistake, thank you, Lori and Eddie, for moving to Pittsburgh.
and for dragging me to a hockey game back in 2018 when I was like, I'm not going to write hockey romances.
Yeah, well.
Not only are you writing hockey romances, you're writing ginormous hockey romances.
And I think I've written like 15 now, something like that.
Yeah. And season ticket holder, and sort of, I did not make you drink the water. I just took you to the stream.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. My living room has 2 walls that are completely covered in hockey stuff now.
Nice.
I have there's one wall that's nothing but autographed photos, another one that's got the paintings, and then I have like 10 hockey sticks leaning against the corner of the wall. I'm like,
well, you can kind of see a little bit of, back here, as this is actually a Penguin season ticket holder flag. That's, you can sort of see that. And then I've got my little stickers of guys here. And then if I go this way, there's my Letang Pride jersey hanging on the door there.
And they got me Letang's Pride jersey from last year for Christmas last year, and I think we have our bedroom has hockey jerseys, signed jerseys on all the walls, and we've now had to start spilling out into the hallway. Yeah. So yeah, we are apparently a hockey house now, and it's Anne's fault.
Yeah. So what does the future hold for the On the Board series? There's been a little hint into book 3. Is this a trilogy or possibly more?
More.
Yeah.
We knew halfway through Rookie Mistake that there would be a sequel, and by the time we were done with Scoreless Game, we have ideas for 3 more right now. Whether or not those all happen or whether or not they're the only ones, it's impossible to say, or when, we don't know.
But there will at least
the next one, definitely.
Yeah, definitely the next one. Again, not quite exactly sure when that'll happen, depending on, because I really should finish something of my own and put it out.
I try not to monopolize all of Anne's time.
Yeah, and the thing is, I do have a full-time job in addition to writing, so that takes, that's the majority of my days are with a job that keeps the roof over my head and the cats in kibble, especially the new very large cat. Surprisingly, one of the things that surprised me about the co-writing is just actually how fast it moves, because it does seem to go a lot. I mean, well, one, you're only writing half a book each.
With us, that's the length of an entire book.
The length of a full novel. Yeah, okay. But there's something about writing a scene and then finishing it and like sending it out to somebody, and it's like, and then it comes back and there's more stuff. It's like there's a new thing you can, you get to read what happens next, and you didn't actually have to think about it yourself. So I think once we pull the trigger, it won't take that long to write.
Yeah. I'm probably going to write my first chapter in the next book fairly soon just because it won't shut up. So, because my character is very in my ear.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to write that character since book 1. So
yeah.
Okay.
So the first one of the love interests is from book 1, and the other love interest is from
book 2.
You'll meet in book 2.
Excellent. We love to get book recs. What have both of you read recently that our listeners should be picking up?
I've been catching up on the Psychop books because I got behind on those. So that's my go-to binge series.
I haven't been reading as much. For some reason, reading's been really hard for me this past year. I don't know why. I guess everybody goes through the sort of the swings of things. But I did read the first 2 books in Layla Rain's new series, Perfect Play. Bad Bishop is the second one. The first one is, I don't remember what the first one is now. It's the cowboy on the cover, and I'm like, what is the name of the book? But yeah, no, I love Layla's stuff in general. I will jump at any chance to read what she's written. So I guess the other one that I read that I really liked, which just came out a while ago too, is Cat Sebastian's Tommy Calvert Was Here. I really enjoyed that. It's more, she's known for more of her historical. This is still kind of historical, but it's more modern because I think it's but I really just enjoyed it. It's actually a good book for the winter, I would think, picking it up around winter, because I think it's set around, there's some scenes that are set around Thanksgiving in the winter months. So it's kind of a holiday read, although it's not, I don't think it's positioned to be a holiday read.
It's winter solstice reading.
Yeah.
So besides Scoreless Game in 2023, what can you two share about what else is coming up for you in the new year?
I've got Kari Z and I are releasing our 4th book in the Hitman versus Hitman series, the standalone Hitman versus Hitman. And we're writing the 5th book, which should be the last one, but I make no promises. And I'm starting a new series, contemporary series. It'll probably be out later this year. And I'm working on another hockey book right now that deals with addiction and all kinds of drama and chaos from their past. So that one, I'm hoping to have that one out this spring. That'll be Brick Walls.
Well, you also have the Valentine's story.
Oh yeah, I have a Valentine's Day story called Two Dead Fish Named Kevin. And that comes out on the 14th. And Michael Ferriello is working on the audiobook right now, so it should be out in time.
I'm currently working on, it doesn't have a title yet. I haven't decided what it's going to be called yet, but it definitely will be a shorter book, and it's a paranormal.
Famous last words.
Yeah, no, this one I think, because it's framed by time. There's only so much you can stick in when you do that, but it's sort of a paranormal, kind of fated mate book that it's set here in the Pittsburgh area. It's fictitious town on the Ohio River, kind of like Swickley, but not. And if you know the area, you know Swickley. And it's between a crow shifter and a sort of half human, half fae character who hunts the dead. And they've known each other from childhood, and it's sort of, one goes away for a while and comes back, and it's sort of the ramifications of him coming back and taking on the mantle of his family. And the crow shifter is part of his family, owns a jewelry store in town, and it's just sort of this getting back to know each other, and both of them sort of knowing that there's a bond between them, and one of them just not having any of it, not wanting to be part of this thing. So I haven't quite, it's a little darker than some of my other things, because it does deal with, the undead in some ways. Despite, the being a lot of world building, it should actually be not that long. I just need to finish it. It's about halfway done.
Excellent. Things to look forward to in 2023. So how can everybody keep up with you online so they know when everything's going to come out?
Everything is on my website, which is gallagherwitt.com. And I'm also on Instagram and Twitter as Gallagher Witt, or you can join the Gallagher Witt Gaggle on Facebook.
Yeah, it's similar with me. I do have a website. I keep it up to date, though. The blog part kind of falls to the wayside. I am mostly on Twitter and Instagram as well. It's Amorgina. I do have a hockey Twitter as well, which I tend to be on more right now because there's a lot more hockey going on.
Yeah, I have a hockey Twitter too. It's Witt Hockey, but I only tweet there usually during games. So
Live tweeting can be fun. Now that I know that that's there, I'll be checking you out there when I know you're at games.
Yeah, I'm it's hard because it's a long my hockey Twitter is Amber Penguina, I think, which is hard to spell, but it's I tend to hang out. My regular Twitter, my normal Twitter, there's a lot on there. I've followed a lot more people on there, so I need to like curate my list basically, because it seems like I'll get on there and there's a lot of politics and that just depresses me. And I just
Mine's kind of the same way. My regular Twitter is basically half writing stuff and half politics, because I do tweet a lot politically. But my Instagram and my hockey Twitter are not political at all. There's no politics on any of those. So those are the hockey Twitter is just hockey, nothing else. And then the Instagram is basically my cats, my paintings, and hockey.
And books, because you post your books there too. Yeah, and I post my books on my Instagram, teasers and things like that. I'm also on Facebook. I do have a Facebook group.
We should do some teasers for Scoreless Game after we get edits, just to
well, I did
people's appetite a little.
I think on Twitter I do have a few teasers, little clips of things.
Well, we had one teaser and there was bookmarks at GRL, and the quote on it is just "that beautiful blue-eyed jackass of my dreams," and there were so many people going, "Okay, but which one was saying it? Was it Elias saying it about Anisha or the other way around?" And we're like, "Guess you'll have to find out."
Oh, that's part of the fun. That's why it's a teaser.
Because they are both beautiful blue-eyed jackasses. So.
It's true. It's true. And they do a lot of, oh God, those boys.
All right. Well, we're going to link to everything in the show notes that we've talked about, which is awesome. And Anna and Lori, I'm so glad you both came and hung out and talked about these wonderful books. Can't wait to read the new one, and Happy New Year to you both. Have a great 2023.
Thank you. You too.